Wyatt watched as the lone wolf fell unconscious before his eyes, his words echoing in his mind. Turning to Clara, he asked, "Was he serious?" The blonde woman let out a defeated sigh. "I'm afraid so. You may call me an optimist, but I hold the hope that in his injured state, the roaring thunder spoke without thinking things thoroughly." "He wouldn't be a lone wolf if his mind could be so easily clouded," Cynthia pointed out. "Must you slay my ambitions with such mirth, you heartless monster?" Clara asked, eyeing her bodyguard with mild annoyance, which resulted in the blue-haired woman shrugging slightly with a smirk on her lips. Turning to Wyatt, she continued, "Now it is my turn to ask you the same question, Wyatt. Are you serious? Will you truly not claim any bounty from him?" Wyatt nodded. "I could ask for credits, but I already have many. I don't know how to spend so much wealth. I see no point other than storing it, preserving it, and using it when I need it. What else could I ask for? It wouldn't be right." Cynthia frowned in confusion. "What wouldn't be right?" "We were carrying out our duties and came to blows because of it. Taking anything from him seems wrong to me," Wyatt replied simply. "The same could be said about your incursion in the gallant venture," Cynthia pressed on, leaving the unspoken part to ring loudly on its own. Wyatt nodded. There was no other way to get to the bridge. "I didn't enjoy killing them, but their choices and mine clashed. One will always surrender or die when enemies face each other in combat. They died. I lived. It's a risk we all face," Wyatt replied, as easily as talking about the weather in a casual conversation. Clara shot a glance at Cynthia, who, in turn, returned it with intrigue. "The risk of military life?" Cynthia asked. Wyatt shrugged. "Just life." "I always forget how grim you can be, Wyatt," Clara commented. "Anyhow, many would call you an idiot or a simpleton for not taking advantage of such an advantageous position. I, on the other hand, choose to call your decision a truly noble one." Wyatt had to suppress a frown from forming when he received Clara's praise, and for a moment considered going back on his initial claim and asking for something just so that the purple-eyed woman stopped describing him with such a dirty word. Clara blinked twice, and her lips curled into an amused smile. "Do you truly hate the concept of honor to such a fundamental level, Wyatt?" The pilot opened his mouth, but then his eyes narrowed. Crossing his arms, he stared at his blonde friend's eyes with suspicion. "Again with this? Clara, can you read my mind somehow?" he asked in his mind. The princess's smile didn't waver, but she raised an eyebrow in intrigue. "That one is difficult to interpret. But if I'm correct, then I can tell you once we are in private." "I knew it. I'm dead. She can read my mind." "Mr. Warlow, I'm not safe within my head," he cried out in despair, but smiled all the same. The fact that Clara had yet to punish him gave him some reassurance that mercy was still an option. A giggle from the princess eased his worries, his smile widening slightly. Glancing at Cynthia, he found the blue-haired woman with a finger pressed against her lips, silencing him. With a nod, he found his voice. "Clara, should I ask Maximilian to be under your service?" he asked more seriously. Clara shook her head, her eyes shifting to the unconscious man. "As tempting as it is, he rejected me outright, despite knowing that any blow to his reputation and honor would be heavily diminished or ignored by serving House Astor. With him stepping down and retiring as a lone wolf, perhaps we could enlist his services as a third-party instructor or private teacher," Cynthia proposed. Again, tempting. "But I'm afraid that Maximilian Userek understands his position and the implications behind it in this conflict to do something so monumentally foolish," Clara replied, crossing her arms before continuing. "One does not become a lone wolf without meeting a particular set of requirements, both in social and skill terms. If he were to come under my service or the service of any prince-aligned forces after rupturing his contract with House Centaur and stepping down as a lone wolf, then great shame and numerous repercussions would fall not only upon himself, but upon his entire house and potentially their allies. He'd be seen as an untrustworthy cheat, a liar, a man without honor. Beneath his bluster, ego, and self-aggrandizement, there lies a cunning, intelligent, and honorable man. Then are you going to let him go? Retire and remain neutral for as long as this dispute rages on?" Cynthia asked, concerned. "As much as it pains me to say this, yes. I have nothing I can offer him, and my esteemed Knight Banneret has made his decision. And I, as princess, shall respect their choices with dignity," she said, then smiled, turning away from the Medicare pod. "Not to mention that his autographs will be incredibly rarer and more valuable. And I got his final autograph as a lone wolf. I am leaving empty-handed." Immediately after, Cynthia shook her head in disapproval but said nothing for several moments, allowing her blonde friend to rejoice in her victory. What will you do about his fighter? He all but gifted it to you. I'll have Jincho examine it, see what he can learn from it. His love for fighters and all they are and represent may match my own. Then, if possible, I'll have it restored and I'll keep it a prized possession. A grand trophy and memento at the same time, Clara declared with childlike glee. Why did I bother asking in the first place? Cynthia asked rhetorically, shaking her head again. Oh, shush you, Clara declared, pointing a finger playfully at her best friend and bodyguard before turning it upon Wyatt. As for you, Wyatt, are you ready for your psyche evaluation? I am, replied the pilot, despite not looking forward to it. He had no problems putting his trust in medics, nurses, and physicians, but therapists and psychologists only served to remind him of pointless, useless talks and examinations during his childhood. That reminds me, Wyatt, you didn't forget to eat before heading my princess's call, did you? Cynthia asked, eyes narrowed. I wouldn't be here otherwise, Cynthia, he replied truthfully, and he wasn't exaggerating. After perhaps the best sleep since he cared to remember ended, he woke up to a rumbling belly that demanded food immediately. Before he could leave his quarters, he all but devoured 3 lachoas just to stop the hollow pain in his stomach. He barely remembered putting on his trimmed and pressed uniform before rushing to the mess hall. He ate 3 standard meals and drank several glasses of water before his stomach declared a ceasefire. Following Milcades' advice, he also ate half a ration bar, which, despite its unappealing taste, was tolerable at that moment. With his stomach full but craving sweets and baked goods, he joined his friends shortly after. In that case, I'm looking forward to seeing the results, Cynthia declared. Ah, that reminds me. Wyatt, Captain Ciro Ortega wishes to talk with you in person. Please visit him once you are done here. He's confined in his provisional quarters. In the meantime, I must first inform my brother of our current situation and initiate contact with the planet's inhabitants, said the violet-eyed woman. Wyatt nodded in understanding. Will the composters be needed? I think all of you deserve a small break. I'll make sure Redford sends our most obtuse pilots for this task. Even they will understand the implications, Clara revealed in a slightly colder tone. Now off with you. We have much yet to do. As my princess commands, Wyatt saluted and watched his friends turn and leave for several moments before, out of the corner of his vision, he saw a medic approaching him from the right. Turning to face him, the medic tapped on a datapad with disinterest. Lieutenant Staples, please follow me. I'll be performing your psyche evaluation, the medic exclaimed. Wyatt suppressed a groan but obeyed. Navio, Clara's quarters. Entering her private chambers, Clara spared a moment to glance at the protected shelf containing the fighter model Wyatt had gifted her, other pieces of her collection, and Maximilian's autograph. Feeling satisfied with her prizes, with a single thought, the ground opened before the shelf, revealing a larger-scale QEC. Sitting on the chair in front of it, Clara closed her eyes for a moment and connected with it. Her enhanced reality field came to life, and a sphere of blue particles appeared in front of her. She felt the machine begin its sequence, waiting for what felt like an eternity until her brother, the prince, took form as the sphere molded itself to his visage. "Brother dearest," Clara greeted with a smile. The prince let out a deep sigh of relief upon seeing his sister. "Oh, Clara, I am beyond happy to see you alive and unharmed. What of Cynthia and Redford?" "Fret not, brother dearest. Cynthia and Redford are with me, alive and largely unharmed. I apologize if I made you wait, but I needed time to compile a report and the most vital information that came after our victory at Hastrung." The prince nodded. "Understandable. You're not fond of half measures, Clara. I'm still your brother and I... Wait. What did you say?" the prince asked as he leaned forward slightly. "Did I hear correctly? Victory? You actually achieved victory over the Drazen and rebel forces?" "The Drazen were more than generous to destroy their rebel and pirate allies in space after a perceived betrayal," Clara informed. The prince frowned. "Alliances? Those types of alliances aren't unheard of, but to such an extent?" "How did their alliance crumble?" "Jintrax," Clara replied solidly. "The Drazen raiders we encountered in Jintrax were meant to be a first strike that would carve a bloody path across several systems, all to satisfy the thirst for conquest of a singular madman and would-be tyrant." "How did you come across this information? Is it to be trusted without a doubt or fear of tampering?" the prince asked, visibly shaken. "Cynthia was the one to extract the information. I'll send all of it, including battle records, casualty and fatality reports, and much more, brother dearest. Clara paused, allowing her brother to absorb the information. Jinn tracks. We were betrayed from within, transmitting our movements to the enemy. And yet, it was entirely by chance that we were able to stop the Drazen and cause ripple effects that only now are making themselves present, the prince said, crossing his arms and tapping his right index finger repeatedly. What of our knight Banneret? Does he yet live? Clara smiled. My brother dearest, is that genuine care I detect in your voice? I consider him a loyal subject, and I'm in his debt for everything he's done. You're not the only one who cherishes sincere friendships, dearest sister of mine, the prince countered. In that case, brother dearest, I suggest you pay attention to the information I'm about to send you, Clara said mischievously. The prince narrowed his eyes. I truly detest when you say things that way. Not once has it failed to impress or infuriate me in the past. Clara ignored her brother's comment, instead sending him all the information she had on hand. She watched as her brother processed the steady data stream upload quickly, reducing the time needed to read and process the information from hours to mere seconds. When it was over, her brother's eyes snapped open. What? The prince uttered in complete bafflement. His eyes darted from one direction to another for several long, silent moments until they landed on his sister. Clara, I lay claim to... Unfortunately for you, brother dearest, though Wyatt may be a knight banneret of House Astor, he belongs to me. As a friend, he's become precious to me. As a confidant, immeasurable. And as my personal pilot and part of my inner circle and retinue, I will never let him go willingly, Clara declared, her voice serious and carrying the weight of her authority, but in a familiar manner. You are a rapacious, greedy, covetous creature, Clara, the prince declared a second later. Then the two siblings shared a deep laugh that ended all too quickly. Setting aside his outburst and less than honorable display of ruthlessness, his achievements far outweigh them in terms of magnitude. Managing to not only survive but effectively turn the tides of fortune against a superior fighter contingent with minimal losses, his tactical contributions in battle, the defeat of Maximilian Userek, a lone wolf, and his assault on the gallant Venture. The blond man hummed deeply, his left hand moving on its own to move a piece on an invisible chessboard. Is he sound of mind after his incursion? We're waiting on his psyche report, but I suspect he's sound of mind. Cynthia suspects that Wyatt is unmoved and unshaken. I must admit I share her conclusions, Clara confessed. I understand, the prince replied. He must be rewarded accordingly. It can't be publicly known that Redford asked for his advice multiple times, nor that he implemented Wyatt's approach on ZTK 990 for offensive purposes. I apologize in advance, but what sort of madman is he to even consider such methods? Has he no consideration for material cost or fears losing already limited resources? If there's one thing I've learned about Wyatt, it is that victory and survival are his top priorities. He will do whatever it takes to win. Use any tactic his puzzling mind can conjure in the heat of battle, no matter how deplorable, no matter how outlandish or outside the box, no matter how heinous or dishonorable. He will see his duty fulfilled, and yet at the same time he values life. How curious, is it not? Clara asked with a gentle smile. To us that know more about him it is. To outside viewers and stubborn nobles set on their ways, a dangerous unknown and an even more dangerous competitor. But his contributions can't be ignored, not even by old imbeciles such as George Lintar, said the prince. What do you plan to do about that, brother dearest? Clara asked, almost innocently tilting her head. I need to think this through, but leave it to me. I'll also oversee the promotions and elevations that you've requested, the prince said with amusement. Of course it would you who found another soul as fanatically in love with fighters as you. It will be difficult, but I'll see them understand the reason for accepting this Jinsho into your personal care. Redford will complain and refuse a much-deserved promotion after this victory, Clara pointed out. I'll make a symbolic promotion. Our dear Uncle Redford wouldn't be happy with either of us if I tried to make it official, he finished with a chuckle. I'm more surprised that your pet project with those kids is paying off. So am I, honestly. I took a gamble that maybe those children could still be saved. I'm more than pleased with the results so far, and I'm eager to witness the future implications and projects that could arise from it if all goes well, Clara admitted. That aside, what do you plan to do with the disabled Drazen ships, the Eternal Garden, and the remaining traitor ships and their crews? The prince asked more seriously now. The cattle ship and the Drazen ships will remain as potential bargaining chips for me to use once I contact the planet. In fact, I plan to do so after our meeting is concluded. The crews will be treated as the laws dictate. Most commoners have pledged themselves to our cause. Except for a few, I'll send most of them to you to judge or incarcerate as you see fit, brother dearest. But Felicity Centaur and Casimir Caiston will be returning to Duke Draymore, Clara explained. I have plans for the captured black ships, but I'll send the gallant venture to you as a most heartfelt gift for further investigation. Then I'll thank you now for such a wonderful gift. Amelia's engineers are doing what they can with the ship available to us, but a larger specimen will be of tremendous aid to their efforts. However, elucidate me, dear sister. Felicity, I can understand. But why send Casimir back too? Wouldn't he be more useful to you as bait to lure Tamarin or Andrew Caiston out? Because, brother dearest, I want Andrew Caiston to see with his own eyes what has become of his favored son. I want him to know that Casimir is useless to me. So useless that I won't even consider the idea of holding him prisoner, Clara declared with malicious intent. Then I presume you've selected your target carefully, the prince said. You don't want him chasing you around. You want him in a predictable position. Let him focus his vendetta from a place you may be able to strike. Precisely, Clara agreed. Is there something else you wish to discuss, brother dearest? Yes. 1. Istonel Ferentis. I can see the potential benefits of gaining his favor and perhaps that of House Ferentis alongside his. But taking in live Drazan? I must protest against this measure, Clara. I don't want a single one of those repugnant carrion feeders to be near you, said the prince in all seriousness. Precautions have been in place, brother dearest. Not a single one of them shall fall within my sight, Clara reassured. Any news regarding Alexander or Giovanni? I'm afraid not. No one seems to know where they are. It is possible that they were captured or have requested seclusion for their own safety with a neutral house, the prince proposed. I sincerely hope that you're right, brother. I'd rather see them captured but alive than take any grim alternative, Clara confessed. It is good to see you again, even like this, Clara. I'll leave this matter in your capable hands, the prince said, his body rapidly reforming into a sphere. Clara cut the connection. Her enhanced reality field deactivated itself, and she returned to the real world. That went well, Cynthia declared as she offered a hand to her friend. Clara took it and helped her stand up. More so than I thought. Then again, he's always preferred a more hands-on approach to problem-solving, Clara replied. Suddenly, an alert from Milcades reached her, carrying a single message. It is out. This will be interesting to see. Wyatt Staples quickly found Ciro's confinement quarters and wasn't surprised to find 2 Marines plus 2 auxilia for each Marine guarding the door. As he approached, all 6 men and women gave him a quick but respectful salute. More interestingly, however, was how the Marines shifted uncomfortably and tried to avoid eye contact despite their faces being concealed by their helmets. I'm here to speak with the prisoner Ciro Ortega, Wyatt declared. Of course, sir. We've got orders to let you in as soon as your arrival was confirmed, replied one of the Marines, stepping aside as the door slid open. The prisoner is unarmed and has limited mobility. Do you require an escort, Lieutenant Staples? No need, but thank you, he said, even as his upbringing and education screamed at him to show more respect to a noble. But that urge was becoming weaker and weaker with each passing day. It was still strange to talk to nobles on equal standing or without showing submission all the time, but he was adapting to it. Perhaps a little too well? He asked himself as he stepped through the doorframe, only for it to slide close behind him. The quarters were small but comfortable, a desk, a bed, and what appeared to be a small private bathroom. Ciro Ortega was sitting in front of the desk, reading from a datapad. Captain Ciro? Wyatt made himself known as the captain was, apparently too engrossed in whatever he was reading to notice his arrival. The captain tapped his datapad and gently put it on the desk. Ah, Sir Wyatt, I see you're recovering without issues, said the older man. Standing up, he revealed that his wrists were cuffed and a long but thin line connected them. Thank you for taking the time to entertain me with your presence. I was told you wanted to speak with me in person, Wyatt replied in an amicable tone as he spotted that Ciro's ankles also shared the same decorations. He also noticed that the man was dressed in a clean uniform and didn't look like he'd endured torture or anything of the sort, except for the notable bruises on his face and chin. You're not in too much pain, I hope. Ciro smiled, chuckling. I woke up with one of the worst headaches I've ever experienced. I couldn't move my jaw properly, and everything tasted of metal and blood. Needless to say, it was not an enviable position to be in. But I woke up, alive. Thanks to your mercy, Lieutenant Wyatt, the captain confessed with a genuine smile. I didn't see a reason to kill you after defeating you, Captain. It is as you said. We were just carrying out our duties, Wyatt replied, keeping his distance. Many would disagree with you. Regardless, allow me to express my gratitude in the only way that has any merit whatsoever, Lieutenant, Ciro exclaimed and bowed his head deeply. Thank you for sparing my life and that of my men at the cost of your besmirching your honor to do so. It is a debt I won't be able to pay within a single lifetime. Wyatt ignored the last part as he replied. You cared about the lives of those under your command. That's enough reason for me to keep my word. It cost me nothing to spare your life. Ciro pulled back, staring Wyatt in his heterochromatic eyes again. You're a selfless man, Sir Wyatt Staples. Now that I peer into your eyes again, I can't help but feel a chill run down my spine. Be that as it may, I shall take your word for granted, and thank you once more as I congratulate you on your victory. May our paths never cross again beset against each other. Wyatt smiled at the older man and closed the distance between them until he was close enough to reach out with a hand. To that, Captain, I can agree wholeheartedly. Ciro glanced at Wyatt's hand, then at his eyes, then back to his hand before settling in a happily surprised grin. Not breaking eye contact, Ciro reached out to grasp Wyatt's hand tightly. May your nascent house prosper, Sir Wyatt. Call me not by rank anymore. You've earned that much at least. Just as long as you call me by mine, Ciro Ortega, Wyatt replied, holding their handshake for several moments until he let go, looking away. Excuse me. My princess summons me. Give Her Majesty my regards, Wyatt Staples, Ciro replied sincerely, watching the pilot leave moments later. Sitting down again and satisfied with himself, Ciro picked his datapad up, and with a single tap, the video resumed playing, just in time to see himself receiving the uppercut that made his chin tingle with pain. May your fortune shine brightly, commoner turned noble. Sir Wyatt Staples, a valiant knight.